Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche said that faith is not wanting to know what is true. And his American contemporary, Mark Twain, another philosopher in the Giant Mustache Club, agreed, saying that faith means believing what you know ain't so. I often quote the two together because they both got it right, and I see that demonstrated regularly even among longtime friends and family, who are my target audience, the ones I most want to reach, but who I can't reach because they don't want to know what the reality really is. They want to make believe something else instead. I usually see this when we're talking about science versus religious dogma, where it's all too easy to show them the proof that what they just said is completely wrong. And it seems as if they already know that because they will not let me show them what they don't want to see. They want to keep believing what they want to be true, and they don't dare test it to risk finding out that it's not true. That's what I can't wrap my head around. I don't understand being incurious. I mean, I can understand being, more interested in one topic than another, or not being at all interested in a given topic, but not being curious about anything, especially if it's consequential. Because I do understand that only accurate information has practical application, because you're going to base your decisions on whatever information you have. Thus, the only value information can have is in however accurate you can show it to be. But if you can't show that it's accurate at all, then it has no value at all. So if it's a matter of consequence, like how you're going to vote, for example, then you ought to at least confirm that your understanding is correct. Do you at least have the facts straight? But I notice that the MAGA people typically don't know any more about politics than they don't know about science. Yet in both spheres, they live in a Dunning-Kruger wonderland where they think they know more than every expert about both subjects. It's bad enough when we're talking about religious nonsense, but it's actually worse when we're talking about politics. And the reason why it's worse is because politics is real and it's right now. We're not talking about something that happened long ago and maybe doesn't matter so much anymore. We're talking about what's about to happen. So it really does matter what the truth is, because if you get this wrong, then someone's going to suffer, be it politically, socially, economically, maybe physically, and maybe even criminally. Now, because I'm an activist, I have to listen to a lot of political commentary, which is kind of my job. And I argue with people in real life and online who think they know more than me because they listen to nonsense networks like Fox News. And of course, I've also seen reports that if you get your news from Fox, then you are actually less informed than if you never saw any news at all. Because Fox is just pure propaganda. That's all it is. They're listed as entertainment rather than news because their job is not to inform you, but to mislead you, to manipulate and motivate you through fear and emotional outrage. Of course, the same goes for all those other, hard right-wing conservative channels too. And I realize there's Democratic propaganda, though nowhere near as dishonest. But I'm not interested in media spin in either direction. So I'm careful to avoid biases in reporting whenever I can. I mean, it's one thing if it's the opening monologue of a late night comedy show, because I know how to tell when someone is only joking. At least left leaning comedians tend to know how to tell a joke, which is something right wing conservatives don't seem to know how to do. But what I especially like is watching Congress directly, unedited, without the opinions of reporters or pundits, so that you know that you're getting the actual raw data unfiltered by anyone's opinions or biases. Now, again, because I'm a secular activist on the board of directors of a 501c3 dedicated to defending the separation of church and state and the rest of the First Amendment, along with the Constitution as a whole and the republic for which it stands, then I am especially concerned with and alarmed by Project 2025, a Christian nationalist agenda supported by over 100 conservative organizations, which promises to end my career and deny most of mine and all of our collective rights, and even overturn our secular republic to replace it with an authoritarian, sectarian theocracy under a ruthless dictator in a system that is otherwise ruled by corporate oligarchs, while most of the rest of us wallow in increasing poverty. That's everything that the Russian Federation is now, which is also everything that the founding fathers warned us against and tried to prevent. I know that all of that sounds alarmist, like a paranoid conspiracy theory, and it literally is a conspiracy, actually, but it's not an illusion nor a secret. We can show that it's real, that there are people in power right now who openly and publicly admit that they really are planning to do exactly this, all of it. Let me prove that to you. Take a look.
You know, Mr. Hamilton, I don't want you to feel left out of this conversation. So I'm going to make sure I ask you some questions. Let me know if you're having problems answering them, because they really should be yes or no. Let's see. You're the executive director for the America First Legal, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And America First Legal is a member of Project 2025, which is dedicated to creating the playbook for the next conservative administration and what it calls the Project Pillars, correct?
We are proud contributors to Project 2025.
Okay. And are you familiar with Project 2025's mandate for leadership?
In fact, I am.
Okay. And in fact, you wrote some of the sections of this mandate related to the DOJ, correct?
Sure did.
And the mandate outlines policy priorities for the next conservative president. Is that correct?
It does.
You've done a great job. I just want to let you know. All right, so let's walk through some of the provisions of the mandate. It calls for eliminating the Department of Education, eliminating the Department of Commerce, deploying the military for the use of domestic law enforcement against protesters under the Insurrection Act of 1807. It also has the repealing of Schedule F status for thousands of federal employees to allow a president to replace career civil servants with unqualified partisan loyalists. That's probably my favorite of it. It also prohibits the FBI from combating the spread of misinformation and disinformation, like Russia and China, who are actively trying to interfere with American elections. I don't know why or how anybody can support Project 2025. And I know that there was allegedly a joke about dictators and whether or not that's funny, but in the United States of America, dictatorships are never funny. And Project 2025 is giving the playbook for authoritarianism as well as the next dictator to come in.
Notice, we're not getting the possibly inaccurate opinions of political pundits. There's no room or time for media spin, and most alarmingly, this is not hyperbole. This is a congressman talking directly to one of the authors of this anti-American agenda and getting him to admit that it really does say each of these things she just listed. Now, there's a lot more terrible things written into this 920-page manifesto that threaten not only to deny us democracy, but to overturn our constitutional republic and ultimately destroy the Constitution, our government, and our country as we know it. And I'll make more videos about that pretty soon. But for the moment, let's just look at the few highlighted points that were listed so far.
It calls for eliminating the Department of Education.
My entire career as an activist has been struggling against the religious right in defense of secular studies specifically and in support of public education in general. Religious conservatives do not want everyone's children to have equal right or access to education, only the ones whose parents can afford to pay for it. Republican congressmen have already argued that the rest of the kids who cannot afford to go for private schools should return to the workforce. That's why Republicans advocate for lower minimum ages for children to work longer hours or later hours in more dangerous jobs, because they really don't care about children, not everyone's children. Yeah, they don't want anyone's children, not even the rich kids, to understand how things really are. That's why they insist that all the available schools teach religiously biased and politicized propaganda, especially in classes teaching science, sex, or social studies, wherein they can teach an altered history, one favorable to and exclusively interested in white Christians, and that seems to ignore or completely forget about anyone and everyone else.
And eliminating the Department of Commerce.
Now, why would they want to do that? In fact, the mandate for leadership does not appear to explicitly say that they want to eliminate the Department of Commerce, though that is subtly applied, so you have to read it attentively. It's kind of like when you read the Republican Party platform. If you read the national version of it, that one's more sanitized, slightly more sane. But if you read the Texas specific version where they don't expect company to come inspect, that's where they say the quiet parts out loud. That's where you learn that Texas Republicans object to critical thinking because it might challenge a student's fixed beliefs and other things that the national platform knows better than to unambiguously admit. So, for a clearer answer to this question, I went to the Heritage Foundation, who wrote and promote Project 2025, to find out their reasons for shutting down the Department of Commerce. It seems that the biggest one is that it's an umbrella for several other departments, agencies, and programs that conservatives deem too expensive, wasteful, redundant, or unnecessary. Although there are other reasons that they don't get into. Things on the chopping block that were specifically named include the Corporation for Public Broadcasting that funds educational programming. Who wants that, right? The International Trade Administration, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, yeah, because we know that they deal with a lot of climate change, and that would mean human responsibility, and that just might impact the oil industry, so shut the fuck up. So also on the chopping block that was mentioned is the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Education, of course, the Department of Health and Human Services, because we don't believe in vaccines and all that either. The National Science Foundation, because who cares about science? The Minority Business Development Agency, because who cares about minorities? And then the National Marine Fisheries Service and the Advanced Technology Program, the National Weather Service, and the Endangered Species Act. Basically, any program primarily interested in science or environmentalism or cultural development or anything that doesn't promote raping and harvesting all of our natural resources like there's no tomorrow until there literally is no tomorrow left.
Deploying the military for the use of domestic law enforcement against protesters under the Insurrection Act of 1807.
This one should be especially alarming. Remember that just shortly before Trump was elected in 2016, there was a long standoff between a predatory oil pipeline violently attacking and oppressing the Sioux Nation at Standing Rock on the border between North and South Dakota. I was there to see it with my own eyes, what corporate greed would do to people who literally get in their way. The PSYOPs operations, the shooting with rubber bullets, all of that kind of stuff. Now, Obama was invested in this pipeline, and so was Hillary, and so was Trump. But the public image was disastrous. I mean, there were no news stations there, but the news was getting out through, through social media, and it was looking bad. And finally, Obama caved to the recommendations of the Army Corps of Engineers, and he pulled the plug. Now, if Hillary had won the election, I'm sure she would have stood by that decision. But Trump won. And he not only immediately and illegally reversed it, resuming construction, which of course resulted in multiple oil spills, polluting the only available water supply in the area, but Trump also sent in law enforcement to clear out the protesters, and he tried to expand an existing law such that it would have become illegal to protest commercial construction projects. And in fact, I think that law may have gone through, though I don't know. Remember, this is the same guy who 4 years ago ordered the police to fire tear gas into a crowd of people who were protesting police brutality. What do you think Trump will do if he gets to use the military to shut down any protest? Remember also that the extreme court that Trump stacked just might give Trump the power to do what he already said he wants to do and change parts of the Constitution however he wants. Other provisions of Project 2025 would allow him to do that too, regardless what the Supreme Court says. So that under Trump, your right to peaceably assemble to petition the government for redress of grievances will look more like the massacre at Tiananmen Square.
It also has the repealing of Schedule F status for thousands of federal employees to allow a president to replace career civil servants with unqualified partisan loyalists. That's probably my favorite of it.
Just like she said, thousands of trained professionals who normally would continue their careers through every administration would be fired and replaced with unqualified political ideologues based entirely on their loyalty to dear leader, such that all these government agencies become just another extension of Trump's unlimited dictatorial power.
It also prohibits the FBI from combating the spread of misinformation and disinformation, like Russia and China, who are actively trying to interfere with American elections.
Now, why would any dear leader want to eliminate the fact checkers? Is it because all of these right-wing conservative Christian propaganda mills, everything from Fox News to Answers in Genesis, all rely on sensationalized, emotive, exaggerated, misrepresented misinformation? Of course it is. And that's why we'll end up having state news, just like China, Russia, and North Korea already have now, where the information is controlled, censored, and largely fabricated, false. But you're not allowed to question or correct it because of other provisions in Project 2025 that we haven't gotten to yet.
I don't know why or how anybody can support Project 2025.
Understand that when Trump said that we have to vote for him or else we won't have a country left, the truth is that if we elect him, then we won't have a country left. We've seen it happen before. President Putin personally amended the Constitution of the Russian Federation, granting himself even more power than he already had. And at that time, the entire Russian government resigned, leaving him in absolute control to fill all these positions with oligarchs and loyalists and whoever would bend the knee to him directly. That's what Trump wants to do here. And he's going to do it, not just because of how many times he's already said that that's what he always wanted, but because that may also be the only way he'll stay out of prison. So when I try to visit the older people in my family, politics eventually come up, and people in my family will invariably say ridiculous things that we can disprove in a moment. Just get on Google. It only takes 2 minutes to realize what you just said is not true. But then when I try to show them the truth of how anything really is, they won't look, because they think everything is propaganda. Everything is just liars lying. So we get to just, if everybody's lying, we just pick whatever lie you want to believe, even though everyone's lying. And so everything's a lie. And that should make you explore this a little bit deeper. No, that's not their philosophy at all. So I have to implore them that we're not lying, and I can prove it. And in one case, for example, recently, I tried to show someone, look, I can't show you anything on the news because you're going to say, well, this came from a news agency that I'm just going to do the genetic fallacy and dismiss anything that news agency says. Okay, well, if I show any kind of reporter or any opinion, you're going to dismiss all of that. But what about this? What about this one little 3-minute video, an unedited video of a congressman talking directly to one of the authors of this anti-American agenda, so that you know that it's real. It's really real, and this isn't somebody's opinion, and it isn't spin. But then the answer I get is, I don't want to see it. But this is important, and you need to know this. And then the answer I get is, I don't want to know. I was so confused by that. I didn't know what to say or do. I don't understand wanting to make the wrong decision, the worst possible decision, based on wrong information that you've already got good reason to believe is wrong. But that the people that I care about, that I'm trying to reason with, they don't want to know the truth about anything. They're admitting that reason doesn't matter, that they've forsaken their very sanity. Such an admission is deeply confusing to me, and so sad, heartbreaking, really, that I almost want to cry.